Welcome back, SuicideFantasyFootball.com 2012. Now bringing you the wide receivers that we think are going to be the top 5 in NFL fantasy football.
This is a tough one this year. There's a lot of names, a lot of guys that used to be good, a lot of guys that were top 5, you're not really sure, some injury risks. There's a lot of question marks in wide receiver.
And it's deep, too, so.
Okay.
It's deep.
It's deep?
It's deep.
My number one guy I'm going with, of course, I don't think there's any doubt anybody goes with anybody other than Calvin Johnson.
What? I'm doubting you, dude.
It's Megatron.
Jim, last year, Peyton Hillis, the Madden curse. What happened? All of a sudden, there's no Madden curse?
Peyton Hillis wasn't named after GoBot or anything like that. Megatron, there's a Megatron exemption. He's absolutely the number one wide receiver in fantasy football. Ridiculous beast. He's somebody that you can't even cover. I mean, they can put 2-3 guys on him. You throw the ball up, he's still going to go up and get it and come down with it. I love him. Number 2, I'm going Larry Fitzgerald. I know there's question marks at quarterback there. There's a lot of question marks with every guy after this, but I like Larry Fitzgerald to have another breakout stud season like he had before. Whether it's Red Skelton or my boy Kevin Cobb throwing on the ball, I think Larry Fitzgerald puts up consistent number 1 numbers. Number 3, I'm going Roddy White. A lot of people like Julio Jones more than Roddy White. Not this year. I think Roddy White is going to be that 110 catch, 10 touchdown guy that he was before. I think the attention for Julio Jones is going to make Roddy White better. Like I think it was the opposite way last year. I'm looking for a huge comeback year for Roddy White. Number 4, Greg Jennings. You know, everybody was all over Jordy Nelson last year. He kind of snuck up on some people. Greg Jennings is solid contributor. Touchdowns, no more questions anymore. Can he get in the end zone? Is he a possession receiver? I think he's the number 1 wide receiver and the number 1 offense in football. It's got to count for something. He's my number 4. And number 5, I'm going with Andre Johnson. Before it was Johnson and Johnson, 1A, 1B. Johnson got hurt last year. He's had some problems. Schaub's had some injury problems. I think Andre Johnson reestablishes himself as the elite wide receiver in fantasy football.
We got a lot of the same people in some different positions, and some different rankings. I'm gonna add some in that you don't have. Starting off, I'm with you, Jim. Megatron. I was breaking your balls about the Madden thing just because I think it was ridiculous. Even though I called Peyton to be a bust with you last year, it was because he was not gonna perform, not because he was on the cover of a game. So I'm going Megatron number 1. I'm still sticking with it, Jim. To me, Johnson & Johnson. I'm still keeping Andre Johnson number 2. I know people are moving him down out of the top 10. And I know he's got injury problems. I understand it, but I think this year is going to be re-breakout again for Andre Johnson. Back to that elite wide receiver that we wanted him to be last year. Number 3, I'm with you, Jim, Larry Fitz. Because God forbid one of these guys actually become a decent quarterback. He puts up numbers no matter who's throwing him the ball. Don't get me wrong, when it was Kurt Warner, it was expected. But I believe this year, one of those guys is going to figure it out. They're going to be throwing the ball a ton. They got some other weapons to kind of free up Larry a little bit more, and I think he's going to put up big numbers. Number 4, I've got Brandon Marshall. I love Brandon Marshall back with Jay Cutler, putting up big numbers in Chicago. Finally, they've got that guy they've wanted, and I think Brandon Marshall, although he's a head case, he's an incredible receiver. Now that he's back where he's comfortable with Jay, I think he's huge this year. And number 5, I'm with you, Jim. Greg Jennings, the number 1 receiver on the number 1 offense. That's got to be something, and I think Jordy Nelson is going to be a little bit of a disappointment. You're almost drafting him in the same place. Wait. Get Greg Jennings, stay away from Jordy. He's going to be your guy, and that's my top 5 fantasy football.
You got the white guy factor there?
No, I'm not holding it against white guys. It's just fantasy football. Just like my busted quarterback had nothing to do with race, even though it was Mike Vick and Cam Newton, this has nothing to do with the whiteness of Jordy Nelson either. So that's what I think. Eric at SuicideFantasySports.com. Jim at SuicideFantasySports.com. Check us out on Facebook. We're Suicide Fantasy Football. Twitter, we're SFF Insider. Blog Talk Radio, Monday, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Fantasy Football Overload. Go to one place to get all your fantasy football info, and you don't have to go anywhere else.